Welcome back to another video. Figured I'd talk to you all a little bit about driving in the Ivory Coast. As you can see, I'm in my car today, well, SUV, instead of the moto, and talk a little bit about driving. It is not as bad as people think. A lot of people think African roads are just dirt trails that you go on, but here in Abidjan, the capital city where I am, most of the roads are paved, they're well paved, and so it's as far as road conditions, and Abidjan has a fairly good infrastructure. It's not great. It's nowhere near Europe. It's nowhere near the United States, but it's not the worst. There's still plenty of dirt roads that you can go on, and most of the time you'll have at least one dirt road on your route. You'll go from the main road, and then your destination, like to get to my house, you've got to get from the paved road to a dirt road. To get to the church, you got to go from paved road to, there's just the dirt road is that last section. So the main roads are paved, and a lot of the side roads are paved as well, but there's plenty of dirt roads still to where it's very helpful to have an SUV. That's for sure. But as far as driving in the Ivory Coast, there's a few things you need to realize. One is that lanes are just a reference point. They are not, you stay in your lane, I'll stay in my lane. It's, hey, let's share, let's get these lanes and ebb and flow with what's needed. And so lanes are definitely just a reference point, and I'm sure we'll get an example of that soon. But also, as far as intersections, there are certain intersections that you need to cut people off. And then when you are on the main road and you get cut off on the intersection, you have to remember, I can't get mad at the guy for cutting me off. He's got to go at some point. There's just always traffic. There's enough intersections here in the Ivory Coast that don't have traffic lights, that don't have stop signs. And so there's no way for that side road to get onto the main road because there's going to be constant traffic. So if there's any little break, that person will pull out and you'll have to let him go. And you do the same thing. And so there's a lot more cutting in front of other people, but nobody gets mad because that's just what you do here. That's normal. Another thing that you get used to in the Ivory Coast is being very close to other vehicles. So you'll feel like you're super close to another vehicle, and on their bumper, like here. I'm close to this other vehicle, but a motorcycle can probably fit in between us. You'll think you're close, and then a motorcycle will come in between you, or a pedestrian will walk through, and you're like, I felt like I was touching that guy's bumper, but there's still enough space for a whole motorcycle to fit through. So you start to really learn how much space is really around your vehicle. You start to learn your vehicle a lot better, because other vehicles, motorcycles, pedestrians are just so much closer to your vehicle. And so you just get comfortable with it. It's like, okay, there's actually more space than I thought. They're not as close to me as I thought. And you start to learn, okay, I can fit through that space. It doesn't look like I can, but I've done a space smaller than that before. And so here's another example of that bus kind of cutting off our traffic. So we all stop, but he's got to get out. The bus is going to come over because there's a Baka up there, and he's just going to come into our lane a little bit. And he's going to stay in his lane, but he's going to share a little bit of our lane. That's what you got to do. These we've got two lanes going this direction, but that shoulder will become a Baka stop, which the Bakas are the transportation buses here, the public transport, and a taxi stop, or just a random car will stop there and let a passenger out. And so the shoulder will become a parking lot. And so the person in the right lane will shift over to the left lane, and then me in the left lane will shift over here to the center, and then we can make it a 3-lane road. Even though there's really only 2 lanes going this direction, the shoulder kind of acts as a, it's not a full lane, but you can share your lanes with each other. So you just kind of ebb and flow around traffic. And the same goes for the left lane. This lane often becomes a left turn lane. So this isn't the left turn here isn't super popular, but every now and again, there'll be a person that's turning left at this intersection. And so me in the left lane, I'll shift over into the right lane. The person in the right lane will shift over into the shoulder, and will just ebb and flow. The lanes are just a reference point. So it's not, you do not leave your lane. Don't come into my lane and people getting mad at you for sharing lanes. It's just what you normally do here. Oftentimes just after this intersection is a Baca stop. And so this taxi is going to come over. And that's the other thing I kind of like about driving in the Ivory Coast is cars tend to use their blinkers. They tend to communicate well. If they don't use their blinkers, their windows are normally down and they'll have their hand out the window. And so they'll kind of signal with their hand like, hey, I want over, let me over. Or they'll put a thumbs up, thanks for letting me over. And so you just kind of ebb and flow. And it's kind of necessary because, like I said, it's a good infrastructure here in Ivory Coast, but it's not great. There's not a lot of parallel roads, and there is just a lot of cars for the amount of road, and so there's always traffic. So if you don't ebb and flow, there's going to be more traffic than there already is. So hopefully this guy is going straight. But just in case, it looks like he got over far to the left, so I can maybe still go straight if he's not. So again, people are also, another thing I like about Ivory Coast is people are a lot more defensive drivers. They are aware of what's around them. The problem with the US and Europe is that there are a lot of laws and people tend to follow the laws. And so when somebody doesn't follow the law, inevitably there's a wreck, there's a crash. Because, see, I'm just gonna shift over here to the middle. The Baca will shift over, we can all go. And so, yeah, in the US, if somebody doesn't follow the law, you're not expecting it. Whereas here, you're always expecting somebody not to follow the law. And so you're always on the lookout, okay, what is this person gonna do? You're always aware of, okay, there's this person behind me, there's this person in my blind spot. The drivers here tend to be a lot more aware of what's around them and a lot better defensive drivers than you would find in the US. And so again, even there, that guy standing in the middle, that's one thing I'm not a fan of in Ivory Coast is the pedestrian situation. There's not a lot of crosswalks. And so these guys are sitting in the middle. And so I'll shift over into the middle of the road so I don't come close to them. The person in the right lane will shift over to the shoulder, and you just kind of ebb and flow around pedestrians, around motorcycles, around Bacas, the public transport buses, which are, you know, this white bus up here. They always have some fun paintings on them too. The blue bus with the guy there, the gray bus. But you just kind of shift with lanes being the reference points. But you are aware of, okay, there is a person in the right lane when I'm shifting, and you are trusting that they are aware that you're going to shift over because they see what you see. So you have to be aware of, okay, there's a Baca in the right lane, so the person in the right lane is going to want to come into my lane, or there's this guy coming over, and so you got to stop, be cut off. And you saw he gave a little wave out the window. Just communication. They communicate a lot more because most of the time their windows are down, and that also helps them be defensive driver because they can hear better. And so lanes are a reference point. You get close to the people and it's just comfortable, and you just ebb and flow, and you have a lot more defensive driving than you would in the States. And there's you know, the dirt roads. So again, most of them are paved. But then you got roads like this. The last little stint of your journey will often be dirt road where it's helpful to have an SUV. All these orange cars are taxis or War-Waras. War-Waras are kind of like the carpool taxi. Taxis will actually have something on the roof saying they're a taxi. The War-Waras are just the orange cars without that. We've also got little fruit stands and vegetable stands and restaurants and people selling random stuff on the side of the road. And then these trucks are what destroy this road. If I could make it illegal for these trucks to come down here, this road would be so much better. These big heavy trucks carrying the cement are what really tear up this dirt road. But yeah, driving is quite the adventure. We'll talk a little bit more about it, maybe on the motorcycle, and talk about some of the unwritten laws of the Ivory Coast, because again, people do drive predictably. What seems like chaos, you can predict. So, continuing our video on driving in the Ivory Coast, now we're on the moto, and as I mentioned, the infrastructure isn't too bad in Abidjan, the capital city. A lot of the roads are paved, but there are still plenty of roads, like this road, where it's not paved, and in a car, it's quite the pain. I feel bad for my car every time I go down this road, and the suspension, not necessarily bad for my car, but bad for me, knowing that I'm going to have to replace the suspension part soon because this is absolutely destroying it. But on the motorcycle, it's a little less bumpy. You can kind of choose your path a little better than a wider vehicle, but it's still not the smoothest experience. And so it's nice to have a truck or an SUV and cars can do it. Those taxis do it all the time. I mean, they absolutely destroy their cars. They bottom out all the time and do some crazy stuff. But fix this mirror. It can be done, but it's definitely nicer to have an SUV not absolutely destroy your car on those dirt roads. But here in Abidjan, most of them are paved. They do have potholes like that one in front of me, which can be fairly deep. Even on the paved roads, you got to watch out because your tire goes into that and your suspension gets quite the shock. Here, you don't know if you saw the right flat turn, wow, the flashing yellow arrow saying I could turn right. There's no turn right on red in the Ivory Coast. And so you need the flashing yellow arrow saying you can go right if the light is red. But driving here in the Ivory Coast, I kind of alluded to earlier some of the unwritten laws, how a lot of this chaos is predictable. But these intersections are always fun. And again, one of the problems with the intersections is there's no left turn arrows. So as you can see, people are turning left, cutting off the people going straight. They don't yield like they're supposed to. Once one person turns left and gets that line cut off, everybody else follows. And I do the same thing because you kind of have to. You just kind of work with what's given you. And so there's not many, there are some intersections with left turn arrows. That is one thing I should mention about the Ivory Coast, is the police have not actually been hard to deal with here. You know, in a lot of African countries, the police will try to get something from you. So they'll make something up and say, hey, you did this, and we'll take your license, we'll take your vehicle, we'll do this if you don't give us, you know, a little money. The police have not been difficult here. I mean, if they actually catch you doing something wrong, for instance, when I first bought my car, the previous owner had put window tint on it. And I'm not sure why he put window tint on it, because it's illegal to have window tint on the windows here. Which again is like any window tint, not just a certain level like in the US, which is kind of annoying because the sun is very strong here and it'd be nice to have window tint. But anyways, the previous owner had window tint on the car, and so when I first got the car, I was being pulled over a lot, and the police would try to write me a ticket. And so if they actually find you doing something wrong, it can be annoying. But again, you've done something wrong, you're breaking the law, so they're doing their job. But they don't tend to make anything up and say, oh, you did this when you didn't do it. And so that's nice. Coming up to the intersection where it's always tight lane splitting. Just follow these other motorcycles. Yeah, the problem is you got two big trucks. So even a motorcycle's not going to help you. But yeah. You've got street vendors as well. Anytime there's traffic light, you're going to have a group of people selling, you name it, they've got it. They'll sell stuff particular to vehicles for the convenience. Windshield wipers, steering wheel covers, phone holders, all of that. And then there'll also be a lot of food, people selling food, banana chips, you name it. Again, a lot of different types of food, and then they'll be selling random stuff, kids' toys, clothes, bookshelves, all of that stuff. I don't know why this guy pulled over. Merci. So we were talking about driving in the Ivory Coast and some of the unwritten laws. And again, I'm thankful that they do follow some of the written laws as well. So again, running a red light isn't super common here. I mean, the motorcycles will do it all the time. So you gotta kind of watch out for them. But as far as cars, they do tend to follow the traffic signals. And then it doesn't look like the timer's working on this light, but one thing I really love about driving in the Ivory Coast is the timers on the traffic lights. Here's Abidjan Mall. Nice little mall. Got a great play place for kids. But the traffic lights have timers. So as you can see on this traffic light coming up here, which I think I'm going to turn left at, I've got 20 seconds till it turns yellow. And so one of the things I hate most about driving in the US, use this guy as a shield, is yellow lights. You're driving, you don't know when it's going to turn yellow, And if it does turn yellow, am I going too fast to where I'm going to have to slam on the brakes and the car behind me is going to rear end me? Do I just try to go through it? Is there enough time on yellow to get through, or am I going to run into another car? And there's just so much with yellow lights in the States. And it's so annoying. But here with the timers, let's see, get around this car. Here with the timers, you can tell, oh, I've got 5 seconds till it's a yellow light, so I know I'm good to go through. Or there's 2 seconds, so I need to start slowing down in a controlled manner so the person behind me knows. And so, I mean, it's my favorite thing about driving here. And I don't know how much it would cost for the United States to install a timer on every traffic light, because there are a lot of traffic lights in the US. But for me, it's without a doubt worth the investment, because it takes a lot of the scariness of running red lights, somebody coming through the red light because it was yellow, because you know, okay, I can start slowing down now. There's a timer. The other benefit is even when it's red, it's a red light and it's counting down to the green light. And if you're driving a manual, you know when to put it into gear. You don't have to have your foot on the clutch the whole time trying to figure out when do I put it in gear. Let's see, do I try to go this way? So the timers really are great, except for when obviously the police a lot of times are there and they try to decide to do their own timing. So they ignore the traffic lights completely and decide to do it all on their own, and that's frustrating because it usually causes a lot more traffic. Man, going on the way back home is going to be a pain. That's a lot of traffic. Again, being in a motorcycle would be nice, but and that's the way it normally is around this time. But driving here, you always have to pay attention. The right lane always becomes a Baca stop or taxi stop, so always aware of things stopping, people, who's around you. Well, I feel like what he did with the gears, now I don't have as much speed as I did before, and it's definitely not as loud as it was before. The verbals aren't quite as the same as they were, so hopefully that means it's running smoother rather than worse. He wants to come all the way over. Not your smartest move, big guy. But there are things I like about driving here and things I dislike. The timers I like. I like how most people are a defensive driver, even though that truck was coming all the way over. He did see me and stopped, and I could have gone around. So they are good at defensive driving. Then things I dislike, the laws are a little loose, and so people can drive crazy and the police aren't going to do anything about it. And it can be dangerous a lot of times. Let's see, I'll probably just make a U-turn here, head back to the house. But I mentioned before, the plates in Ivory Coast, green or blue is a normal plate, yellow is a government official, and black is military. Yeah, the clutch has a lot more give to it than normal. This light doesn't have a timer, as I was just saying how much I like the timers. But there are plenty of things here that are difficult to deal with. So the government people will a lot of times put their hazards on, drive in the wrong lane, and that puts everybody at risk. Military will do the same thing. And it's not like they have red and blue flashing lights like they're supposed to. They're definitely not allowed to do it. It's definitely illegal for them, but who's going to enforce it? The police officers aren't going to enforce it on them. And so let's go back through this traffic. Probably have to fold the mirrors in. Try to get away from all these people merging. But the other thing about driving here is when there is traffic like this, people start doing crazy things. And so driving on the wrong side of the road, again here, it's nice because you can't drive on the wrong side of the road. There's a big concrete median. I'm gonna get over here with these other motorcycles. Try to follow them, although they seem to be driving a little crazy. So a lot of people are getting off this exit. That's the other thing. When there is a lot of traffic, it's normally some people turning left or people getting off an exit. And so then people will, if for instance, with that case, people were getting off on the right on the exit, well, people will go in the left lane to try to skip all the traffic and then cut over last second to get off the exit. And but then they get stuck in the left lane and blocks the people in the left lane from going straight. Or if it's the case of people turning left, people will try to turn left from the right lane. Because they can skip some of the traffic. Or a lot of times people will get in this entrance ramp and try to cut people or get on the shoulder, especially the Bacas. And so it becomes very tight. Like that car thinking, oh, can I fit down the shoulder? But yeah, in a car, this is miserable. So there are some annoyances with driving. It's nice that they're not too strict with the laws. Again, with speeding in particular, it's been nice not to have to constantly pay attention to my speed, wondering if there's just perhaps a police officer with a radar gun that's gonna pull me over, because police officers don't have radar guns here. So it's one less thing to pay attention to, because there's plenty of things here that you need to pay attention to. And so it's nice if you don't have to pay attention to speed. So again, he's got his hazards on, which is annoying because you don't know what he's doing. You can't have your blinker on when you have your hazards on. Cut over here. Wait here with this baka. So again, you got the police directing the traffic, not letting the traffic lights do it. Probably put these back out. I don't know if we're allowed to go or not. Guess we'll just wait.
2 hours later.
Man, I need to clean off these mirrors. I can barely see through them. That's the other annoying thing about driving here, I guess, is your vehicle gets dirty very, very quickly. I mean, you can wash your car, and as soon as you take it out, it's like you never washed it. And so, it's sad, but that's part of life. The other annoying thing are speed bumps. Now, those speed bumps are perfect. They actually don't really do anything. But the speed bumps here in Ivory Coast can be insane. They can be a road hazard. I mean, you have to be going over them, like crawling over them, because they are big. And so in your car, if you, and the other thing is, a lot of times they're not marked by a sign, and so you don't know they're there, and they're the same color as the road. They're not painted white or red or yellow stripes, or they don't have any markings, and so they're hard to see. And if you don't see one and you run over it without slowing down, it will destroy your car. Let's see. See, the police officer's telling us to go through. Don't mind the red light. But for the most part, driving in the Ivory Coast, it's stressful, no doubt. Once you've done it for a few months, a year, and you get kind of used to what people are going to do, it becomes less stressful, but it's never joyriding. There's always something you got to look out for. Try to follow this motorcycle. I'm gonna put in my mirrors. But even with the mirrors folded in, there comes a point where you're not getting through. Probably could have gone around the other way, but I like to be behind a motorcycle. That way I can kind of know if he gets through, then I can probably get through. That was nice of the guy, folding his mirror in for us. Whew, that was hot. That big truck accelerated and the exhaust comes out the side. That was nice and hot. You know what? I might come try this way. So yeah, you can see a lot of the parallel roads are not paved. Oh, you can't turn left out of here. Have to make a U-turn like all these other people, but hopefully I can do it better with a motorcycle, and hopefully it's a little clear. But yeah, it is chaotic. Even if you know what they're doing, it's chaotic. But you do learn some tips and tricks along the way that helps you as you drive here. Put my mirrors back out. But yeah, these poor pedestrians who have to cross this road, it can get crazy. Man, traffic going the other way is pretty bad too. it's always the adventure. On a motorcycle, it's a little less stressful of an adventure, a little more fun of an adventure.